Hello, everyone, and welcome to this panel. I'm delighted to be here today. We've been talking about the interlinking of fast payment systems. We believe this is one of the most promising solutions for enhancing cross-border payments. Interlinking arrangements for payment systems allow banks and other payment service providers to transact with each other without requiring them to participate in the same payment system or use intermediaries. However, agreeing on workable governance and oversight frameworks for interlinking arrangements can be especially challenging due to their multi-jurisdictional, cross-border, and cross-currency nature. So the G20 has identified governance and oversight of FPS, interlinking arrangements, as a priority to help achieve the 2027 targets for cost, speed, access, and transparency of cross-border payments. As you well know, the CPMI published this interim report, which Claudio just reviewed. It was issued as part of the G20 cross-border payments program this year. And we are now, with this panel, working forward to develop our final report. So I'm very pleased to introduce our distinguished panelist speakers who have vast experience in payments in general and in interlinking arrangements specifically. So let me start by introducing Maha Dimachki as head of the Singapore Center of the BIS Innovation Hub. She started this year. Before joining the BIS, Maha was head of early and high growth oversight at UK's Financial Conduct Authority, leading a team in charge of providing supervisory support for startup firms. Next, we have Azleena Idris, Senior Director and Head for Strategy and Environmental, Social and Governance at PayNet Malaysia, the nation's retail payments network. She joined PayNet Malaysia in August 2019 as the Director of Corporate Services Division. Azleena has over 2 decades of combined experience as a regulator and financial services sector professional. Daranee Saeju is Assistant Governor of the Payment Systems Policy and Financial Consumer Protection Group at the Bank of Thailand. Daranee has held several senior positions at the Bank of Thailand over the past 2 decades, most recently as Assistant Governor of the Risk Management Group. Layanah Al-Wreikat is Business Development and Operation Director at the Jordan Payments and Clearing Company, which is mandating with enhancing and promoting digital payments in Jordan. Layanah held several roles here, which she joined more than 5 years ago. She designs and develops system architecture and data flows and manages projects throughout the entire life cycle. Stakeholders. So with that, let me just launch into our first question. Stakeholders involved in interlinking discussions consider efficient governance and oversight frameworks for interlinking arrangements to be a key success factor. However, practitioners have noted the multi-jurisdictional context of interlinking fast payment systems and related divergence in legal frameworks, regulations, and central bank policies. This makes the development of governance and oversight frameworks very challenging. So the first question I'll ask to our panelists is, in the interim report, which Claudio just presented, the CPMI lists these 10 considerations regarding governance of fast payment system interlinking arrangements and their oversight. Which of these considerations are most relevant and why? So let me start in alphabetical order, and I'd like to start with Maha. Maha, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I hope everyone can hear me, and it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on this panel. I mean, the question was specific. Which one of the considerations you think are, most relevant? And I'm not sure. I feel it's a bit of an unfair question. I'm not sure that there is one consideration that I can pull out as being more important than the other, given the complexity that was noted actually of interlinking faster payments. It was rightly noted by stakeholders. So real-time payment systems are domestic systems. They have typically been, set up to serve the domestic market, and so they have differences in legal structure, tech standards, regulatory obligations, compliance processes, and so on. And so bilateral and multilateral linkages can be quite complex. And for me, the strategic alignment as well as objectives and vision, and I'm choosing two, I know, so I'm cheating a little bit, they're the most important in terms of a starting point, I think. And it's the reason I'm choosing those two is because technology often works. Technology can solve problems for us, but it usually stops when it comes to the governance and legal structures and schemes and so on. And so strategic alignment and sharing the same vision and the same objectives go a long way in creating a strong will and determination to want to find a solution. And you mentioned that in the report, actually, under strategic alignment. I think it's the second bullet point. You kind of talk about alignment. I think you say alignment of attitudes, and that to me is exactly the point. It's important to me because of the complexity I mentioned, but more specifically, there are key decisions that need to be made, right? And these are important decisions that they need to be taken, but they can be really challenging decisions. So what scheme prevails? What's the dispute resolution? What are the compliance and sanction screenings that the protocols that need to apply? What standards do we hold here? And we saw this in Project Nexus, which I think I'll come on to in a minute. So Project Nexus is looking at multilateral linking of faster payment systems cross-border. And it is the determination of all of our partners pushing through, finding common grounds, allowed us to kind of move Nexus forward. And this is really important to be steeped in sort of evidence-based work. So, for example, when it came to decision time around sanction screening, different jurisdictions have different sanction screening, and it was important that we sort of agreed to uphold higher standards, as an example. So Nexus by design promotes higher standards, and it can be scalable. And so this is why, for me, those sorts of, that attitude towards the will and determination to do this, and so that the strategic alignment and the vision and objective are really important kind of first points. I don't want to take away from the other considerations because they are important, but to me those are kind of the starting point of making sure that this it kind of carries on in a successful way.
Thank you so much, Maha. That was really informative, and I love that you brought in those life lessons from Nexus. That really puts some concreteness to these considerations. So let me turn next to Azleena and then Daranee. Azleena.
Okay, hi. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I think again, I'm kind of like in the same camp as Maha just now. Kind of like divided of which of the 10 that I should be picking, but coming from a payment system and in the private sector in a way, I would err on the part of business viability as my pick of the whole lot, because regardless of how you link, how elegant the connections can be, how best the governance and oversights are designed, if that particular linkage is not designed in a way that makes sense from a commercial point of view, then it's a linkage that is doomed from the start. The other bit about it is that the impact of a non-viable connection can actually bring forward issues of subsidization, and therefore it threatens the very existence of such a system. So yeah, I think I'll keep my answer short and I'll elaborate a little bit more at a later stage. But yeah, for me, it's I would pick business viability.
Thank you so much, Azleena. I think that's a very, very important point. Let's move next to Daranee.
Okay, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all. And I'm very glad to be here. And again, so I think all of this are quite relevant for each stages of the development, starting from planning, design, to implementation, and all the way to live operation. So it is really hard to choose one. So I chose 4. So So, and actually it's a combination of both Maha and Azleena. First, it's like, I think business viability would lead to a good strategic alignment and objectives and vision, and then things. Let me elaborate a little bit. I think from our experience to implement a successful cross-border linkage, first and foremost, the partner countries should clearly and mutually identify the value proposition to ensure that the viability of that particular corridor, of that particular service on that corridor, right? And if the value proposition and business viability are proven to have potential, then both partner countries agree on commencing the project. The next consideration should be to ensure alignment of the key strategy, objectives, and long-term visions. Because as Maha was saying, that it does require a lot of willpower and determination to make a lot of decisions that involve trade-offs or trade-off between different objectives. So you need an alignment on that to be able to go through and make it go live, right? So the key aspect is we need to strike a balance between inclusivity, sustainability, and the list goes on and on. And another thing that I think is also important, and I agree that it's essential for any initiative to run sustainability and effectively in the long run, is the flexibility and scalability of the governance arrangement. Because from our experience in our initial phase, we get closely involved with the arrangement, with both the planning and the design and implementation stage. We need to intervene, especially for sensitive issues of governance, and we want to have some adequate level of influence to help resolve issues that are challenging for if you leave it just to the private sector to reach a conclusion that we have some broader public interest in mind. But in the long term, we think that the governance, as I mentioned, should be flexible enough to transition into new forms of governance if needed to promote competitiveness of the market and proactively respond to changing demands or promote innovations. So I listed probably 4. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I have heard actually our CPMI members note the trade-offs on this flexibility issue, in that you want to provide concrete sort of information and guidance, but yet you need to be flexible with different jurisdictions' priorities and their legal structures. And so let's turn now to Layanah, please.
Hi, everyone. So I definitely second my esteemed panelists. It was a tough question, but from current experiences in such issues and challenges, I would say that probably considerations related to involvement of stakeholders and the probably as well the interaction between governance and oversight in the design phase of the interlinkage, because it does unfold certain issues that can be solved through collaboration, because they all feed into each other. When you include the overseers can be catalyst actually to instant fast payment, cross-border fast payments in terms of what they're expecting. So you move forward and you shift to consideration of expectations, cooperation, and the proportionate oversight role. The buy-in from the other stakeholders, because they are interacting with customers, so we need to include customer centricity in terms of that. So when you have this two considerations merged together and added together on one table, you will definitely solve challenges while not like messing or just neglecting certain legal or regulatory requirements. So those two considerations probably the most, because they feed into different models, whether as my panelist said, it's when it comes to commercial viability, or whether we talk about customer centricity. So both those two considerations probably emerge or shine the most.
Thank you so much. This was really helpful. We covered a lot of those considerations. I think we all agree that all 10 are important. It's hard to choose just one, but yet some of them are really foundational to build upon. So I'm going to turn to some rather, let's just say, jurisdiction-specific questions. I'd like to start with Azleena next. Azleena, in November, Malaysia successfully established a link between its FPS, Do It Now, and PayNow of Singapore. PayNet is working on further links too. So based on this experience, to what extent is the alignment of strategic and economic policy priorities among the involved jurisdictions important?
To be honest, before we can think of any starting discussions on any bilateral linkages for that matter, the first part that we want to seek is actually the economic alignment and the economic benefits of doing such linkages. Again, it goes back to the issue of commercial viability. Now, if a corridor is about to be considered, the first port of call is to see what are the economic flows that is already coexisting among the two countries. What are the potential economic flows that could accrue the moment we have a fast payment system established between the corridors, and what are the considerations that would enhance such payment flows through a fast payment system, right? So from those three considerations, we then bring it down to the level of who would be the likely beneficiaries, and would that beneficiary account for a majority part of sections of the economy. Now, the way we approach our linkages so far, it has been that way. In the sense that Asia is actually quite interlinked. We belong to this caucus called ASEAN. I think Assistant Governor Daranee is another member. We also linked with Thailand early on, and that it is actually against that consideration that we start and we build upon any considerations to interlink. For that matter, at the central bank level, there's actually a consensus among the ASEAN central banks that establishing bilateral linkages with each other is actually a key consideration, because that actually contributes towards the growth of ASEAN integration. Now, how that happens is because we as an economic bloc actually do recognize that collectively we actually can account for the fifth largest economic bloc, right? And for that matter, there is every benefit for a fast payment system to be established within and among the countries. Now, against that backdrop also, I think Maha would agree that Project Nexus is also built upon that, right? So we are considering bilateral. We are also considering a hub and spoke model within the Nexus, caucus, to see what works best from an efficiency and scalability point of view. Now, the other aspect that we also look at is that to what extent does the financial integration can happen among these economies. If it is financially disintegrated or fragmented, then therein lies the challenge in getting people to be on board in any particular bilateral scheme. So the more homogeneous it is, the better we are at getting this particular linkage live in a short space of time. Now, having said that, the moment we see some economic alignment, there's also the challenge of the different designs within that particular bilateral linkage. Now, if such a design proves to be too challenging and from an economic benefit perspective may not make sense, then it would take a later priority compared to the other considerations that we may want to look into before prioritizing any or pursuing any particular linkage. Yep.
Thank you, Azleena. There's a there's a famous saying from an old movie here: "Build it and they will come." from the movie Field of Dreams. But what you're telling us is it absolutely the opposite, that you take a long time in thinking about the business viability, the economic alignment, and all of those economic decisions before even starting to move forward. Thank you so much. Let me move now to Layanah. So JOPAC has communicated plans to establish a link with BUNA, the regional payment system. Now, do you see any specific challenges when it comes to the establishment of a link with a regional payment system compared to interlinking two domestic fast payment systems? For example, when it comes to the decision-making process or any other of those considerations?
Yeah, sure. So basically, as you said, we've been in communication with my colleagues at BUNA to connect to BUNA, which is a regional fast payment system. So challenges probably like when it comes to decision making and so on, probably they're not as challenging as connecting to two fast payment systems in domestic ones, because you do have this kind of regulator overseer relationship that is also managing the relationship and making it easier for us to move forward. However, probably some of the challenges are related to different jurisdictions connected to that regional hub. Some of the participants might be actually connected to both systems, which also is can be done in a domestic one. Probably traceability of transactions might be an issue, especially when it comes to last mile confirmation, because you will definitely have multi-layers because you'll be connected to a regional hub, and then that regional hub might be connected to other regional hubs. So traceability can be an issue with the last mile confirmation. Scalability on a note might be hectic probably at the hub itself, because you will end up connecting to different other domestic payment systems that require different data, that has different proxy servers. So scalability can be hectic because when it comes, and scalability and agility, because when it comes to actually if as a domestic fast payment system, if I want to change a certain tag or a certain field or a certain whatsoever, it needs to be reflected into the hub and needs to be communicated with other hubs connected to that actual hub. So this does have a challenge. Data requirements as well. We have our own data requirements, but as I said earlier, because regulators within this jurisdiction can actually communicate and get into a unified and structured data, which shouldn't be an issue. Probably the fact of multi-currency, because as a hub, as a fast payment regional hub, you will definitely have a multi-currency scheme that runs over that switch, but domestic ones, they have this one currency that serves the domestic one. So probably like when you want to transfer from one currency to another, FX and currency do form a certain challenge that can be still solved. So when you look at the cost benefit in terms of the challenges versus the opportunities, they do a certain extent match. But yet the benefit of actually expanding the service to a higher or a more customers is very appealing to actually trying to work it out to solve those challenges. That's from my perspective.
Thank you so much. Let's move now to Maha. Maha, the Singapore Center of the BIS Innovation Hub, is of course leading the Nexus project. In the third phase of this project, you're working with Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand to connect their domestic fast payment systems. Could you share with us some experiences and challenges when it comes to designing the governance framework for Nexus for these 5 jurisdictions?
Thank you. I feel like I'm at a test because I've got our colleagues here who are part of the project, keeping me honest, to be honest, in this case. So please chip in if there's any additional points you'd like to make here. So I think I mentioned the willingness and determination do this. I mean, the ASEAN 5 that you mentioned already have looked at bilateral links. They know what it takes. They know that, and there's that strategic alignment. There's the, you know, the objectives and so on. And so a lot of that, the basis is already there. And I like, Tara, what you said around build it and they will come. And I wish that was the case, you know, with Nexus. I feel like we have to start with the right ingredients to get the right partners around the table. And maybe there'll be a bit of FOMO after that. And because we do want Nexus to be global, we do want to, and there could be then a lot of opportunities for other partners to come in, looking at the trade corridors, looking at the, you know, the alignment of strategic, the strategic alignment, the, you know, the objectives, the right outcomes for various jurisdictions to start to join. And then as you build on that, you'll finally see that it becomes a bit of a snowball effect. And so that's the ambition, really, for Nexus. But, you know, we think there is a bit of a get the right partners in place first and then build it. And then as we build it, they will definitely come. The alignment amongst the ASEAN 5, I will say, it's the Nexus team. It's not different central banking, you know, partners coming together with the BIS Innovation Hub. You know, we really have this this sort of the right sort of attitude and culture towards getting the right outcomes, and that helps when key decisions need to be made. Now, from the beginning, it was important that we agreed principles up front. And so for Nexus, it was the public policy goals, scalability was really important, neutrality, agility, inclusivity, and financial sustainability. So all of these were mentioned in your report and by my fellow panelists, and these were at the heart of, you know, at the heart of our work. And on that basis, we designed phase 3. And so phase 3, and I'm going to, one of the work streams in phase 3 is scheme and governance, but I feel like I just want to give context to the others because they all link together. None of these are, you can't separate one from the other. And the 3 work streams that we designed for phase 3 are technology and operations. And this is where we're building on the output from a prototype that we successfully delivered in 2022 to develop sort of production grade design specifications, you know, and a target operating model. So if Nexus goes live into operation, you know, we can make it scalable. And this is from a technology standpoint, as well as, you know, scalable in all aspects. The point on the scalability, particularly sort of volume scale, right, is whilst we can design Nexus to have that scale and volume, it's important for the real-time payment systems or the faster payment systems to also consider the volume uptick that they might see as a result of this, because they might see flows that they haven't seen before. Coming through their rails. So an important consideration, I think, there is on the faster payment systems to think about. Then the second work stream, and there's no priority, they're all equal, but that's the scheme and governance work stream. And that's where we're focusing on developing the working governance framework. This includes sort of the corporate structure, the ownership, the home jurisdiction, you know, sort of the legal jurisdiction, that an entity that can potentially act as the scheme owner of Nexus, how it would operate. And so that also includes developing a scheme rulebook and an effective oversight structure for the Nexus scheme. And then the third work stream, again, a really important one mentioned a few times, is financial sustainability. And we're calling it, in other words, business and commercial. And here we need to ensure that Nexus is going to be self-sufficient, it's going to be viable as an operation, and that it becomes a thriving ecosystem where, you know, all participants are benefiting, they're playing a role. So defining the various roles and opportunities of for example, the private sector and how they can contribute to Nexus is really important. And under that work stream, we're looking at formulating a product roadmap. So, you know, whilst we start with the interlinking, there could be overlay services, it could be kind of a real platform for innovation. We look at fee and revenue model and what does that mean for the various parties, and what are the funding options. So we're considering all of that under that work stream. But like I said, it's really important not to separate them. Each decisions made in one impact potentially what's happening in the other. So structuring phase 3 in this way kind of has allowed us, and you know, part of this, the way we've structured it, meant that we had to engage with various parties, both in the public sector and the private sector, to ensure that everybody sort of understands their role, but we take in all of these views. So we talk to industry stakeholders, as well as other central banks, you know, outside of Asia, because like I said, the ambition for Nexus is that it starts with the ASEAN 5, but potentially expands further afield. And we think everybody needs to be, the stakeholder engagement point that everybody has made, you know, I think is a really important one. Everyone needs to be heard. We need to look at, you know, different views from different angles, and so that engagement is important. But I will say that there's engagement, which is really important, but there is a lot of hard work that needs to be done to kind of move things forward. And what I mean by that is there has to be analysis. There has to be legal, regulatory, technical analysis. We need benchmarking. You know, we need to look at qualitative and quantitative assessments to, you know, in all of these areas that we're considering. So when decisions are being made, when we're having the engagement and the discussions, we have a lot of substance and evidence that we're basing our decisions on. And that I mean, that's a key part of the work that the teams are putting together. The last point I'll make, and I appreciate that I've taken a bit of time here, but I really wanted to make a point on the bilateral versus multilateral arrangements. And, you know, the ASEAN 5 have done these bilateral arrangements, and that experience in actually doing these is really helpful to come into sort of a multilateral structure and trying to set this up. But the key point of difference, I suppose, is whenever you're looking at a bilateral, and please, colleagues, you know, chip in here because you've experienced this firsthand, you have to kind of, you know, look at doing this multiple times. I think we calculated that if there's 60 faster payments around the world, and you want to do bilaterals, you're doing 1,770 kind of, you know, negotiations. And so, you know, each time you have to look at the prevailing scheme, the legal structure, the dispute resolution process, the technical connectivity, and so on and so forth. And when you're looking at under a multilateral solution such as Nexus, whilst it's really ambitious, if we're successful, there'll be one prevailing scheme where we're looking at kind of setting high standards. We don't want to race to the bottom. We want it to be scalable from that perspective, from a sort of a governance and a scheme perspective. And real-time payments only connect once. So it takes away sort of that duplicative work and creates, you know, we think it also can create standardization. And this standardization is one of those things that we always aspire towards when it comes to, you know, when it comes to cross-border payments. So it can also catalyze some standardization where it makes sense. I'm going to stop there and maybe ask for my fellow panelists, maybe Azleena and Daranee, because you know, your countries are obviously part of this, so feel free to chip in and say some more.
Azleena, Daranee, would you like to add anything? Please, go ahead.
Daranee, you go first.
Yeah, thank you. If I may, just a quick comment that Nexus multilateral linking is a lot more complex than doing it bilaterally. But of course, bilaterally, you have to do it so many times, right, to get the same effect. But doing it multilaterally is a lot more complex. And we do appreciate the BIS Innovation Hub to be part of our, you know, of this project. Otherwise, we wouldn't have come this far.
Right. So if I can just add from the Malaysian perspective, I think we've just exceeded our 10th bilateral linkage, you know, and it has already extended beyond ASEAN. And from that experience, what I can gather, and if we were to juxtapose that against Nexus, which is a hub and spoke model, I tend to echo what Assistant Governor Daranee mentioned, that you know, establishing a bilateral linkage is much better in terms of you know, dealing with the complexities and achieving some kind of kind of like consensus on building such a system. But having said that, some degree of standardization is possible. Achieving complete standardization to me is kind of like more of a long-term game. Simply because from our experience of linking with all these economies, we just need to also bear in mind that the way we are constructed from a governance, from an operational, from a structural point of view, kind of like, has a divergence in terms of the genesis, right? So within ASEAN alone, for instance, a majority of ASEAN countries is not based on, kind of like a card type of digital payment, right? So in some of the countries, except for I would say Singapore, right? So with these countries, the protocols and the way that we construct our connections, our flows, as well as the scheme arrangements may not necessarily be truly well and truly compatible with that of a card scheme, right? So when we design a real-time payment system, an account-to-account linkage need not necessarily kind of like have the same characteristics as would a card rail, right? So in that sense, that particular standardization may not be possible, right? So in Asia Pacific alone, I dare say that a majority of the faster growing payment rails, especially in the real-time payments, is actually QR based, right? And account-to-account based. So these two are the ones that's dominating the scene, and the faster growing one is actually in this particular space, as opposed to having a card type of scheme which is actually quite mature and in fact reaching saturation point, right? So a point to note is that at the farthest end, when you connect yourself with end customer and merchant, in in most Asia Pacific regions, you don't really need a point of sale terminal, right? The technology is very simple. In most cases, it's even offline, right? So in that regard, that these specific considerations may be some kind of like a deciding factor, on whether we want to on how to overcome, so that we can standardize or achieve some kind of harmonization. I suppose in the course of the way we connect. I would dare say that we can see at best 4 common permutations, 4, right, from a bilateral linkage alone. Now, from a hub and spoke approach, again, we haven't seen, we haven't come across the magic pill yet, because we're still, together with the rest working on to what would make phase 3 of Project Nexus workable, right? So I just would like to add that perspective. Yeah.
Probably
If I may, that is precisely the sort of debate and challenge that we have in all of our discussions when it comes to delivering Nexus. You've just seen it live.
So Layanah had a comment. Let me just add something to this, because and I've heard our CPMI members also talk about these trade-offs between a bilateral link, which can be simple and relatively quick, and the amount of time it takes to set up in advance all the arrangements to do multilateral linking. And it reminds me of a quote from my favorite yoga teacher. She says, "The slowest way is the fastest way." Meaning, if you take the time in advance to set things up, it ends up going faster in the end. And so that's how I think we can see, all of the time that Maha and Singapore Hub have put into establishing Nexus is going to bear fruit very soon. So Layanah, over to you. You had a comment.
Yeah, so basically, actually, Azleena and we've met last month and we discussed the exact same topic. And as previously mentioned, there's no size that fits all. So I do see a hybrid model between bilateral and multilateral linkages based on the jurisdiction, based on the relationships, based on which way is easier just to avail the service. So I think you will end up having in the world, like you would have a hybrid model that connects 2 domestic fast payments, or like with a hub, or probably 2 banks connected to each other. So I think there will be a hybrid. I think it's on a case by case basis. So we had a long discussion back in like a month ago almost.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yes, one size does not fit all, and there are different solutions for different types of problems. So let me turn to Daranee, and let's talk about Thailand's prompt pay. You've had firsthand experience with FPS interlinking. So can you explain how Bank of Thailand plans to oversee these interlinking arrangements as and if their importance increases, and they could even become systemically important for some certain corridors?
But okay, for now, for the prompt pay now, of course, it based on the risk-based approach, risk-based proportionate oversight approach. And for that, for our experience with prompt pay now, the volume is increasing, but it's still quite low. It's nothing near systemic. So for the arrangement that we have in place right now is that each payment system is subject to the oversight framework of our respective central bank of the MAS and the BOT, right? And the interlink system itself. So they just maintain their own governance framework, but this governance framework is actually compatible to each other because both PromptPay and PayNow are designated as a important payment system. For us, for PromptPay is we follow the ECB. It's called Permanently Important Payment System, PERPS. And for PayNow, and they designated it as a SWIFT, SWIPS, system-wide important payment system. So both are sort of one level below the systemically important. So, and these both do have common oversight standards, you know, all the requirements for any sound retail payment system, legal risk management, settlement finality, operational risk, etc., etc. So those are we refer to its respective central banks. But for the interlinking arrangement itself, we have an arrangement, cooperative oversight arrangement with the MAS, like joint oversight panel, and we define the scope of the cooperation oversight so as to not overlap or duplicate with the individual, with the interlink system, right? So the interlinking arrangement, the joint oversight, we design it to cover two aspects. The first aspect is on setting policies and development plans for the interlinking arrangement, and this would include membership access criteria, whether the new membership or the removal of a membership, and also the appointment and settlement of settlement banks, and any updates or amendments on business rule would be considered together, in the sense that all this would sort of may increase the risk, like for example updates on business rule, such as transaction limits, right? Now it's limit at 1,000 SGD. So if you increase transaction limits, it's actually both increase MLCFT risk and the settlement risk. And so to ensure that this oversight panel, the joint oversight panel, can make sure that the interlinking arrangement still meets its objectives with the proper risk management. Right? And another aspect that we have in place on the joint oversight and the corporate oversight is that we have an arrangement in place in case of disruption or any incidents. We have a communications and coordination procedure in place to make sure that we can coordinate quite swiftly to ensure consumer protection and business continuity management on that front. And case in point on that, there was a case on the scam cross-border that happened a while ago. It's quite anything happen scam cross-border within the same border. I have a lot of problem already. coordinating across agency. Now it's cross jurisdiction. Then it's a lot more complex, and we managed to get together and put procedure in place and actually put more risk mitigation in place for the service. So that's the thing that we're trying to do. That if it become more systemic in nature, then of course there would be more requirements and oversight expectation.
Thank you very much, Daranee, for that that in-depth answer. It's very helpful. So we are approaching the end of our panel. I just wanted to do one quick go around. We have 2 minutes left. One quick go around for any final words that you might have, some takeaways or potentially some lessons learned for those jurisdictions that are thinking of setting up an FPS or interlinking, or just a message that you want to leave us with. So let me start with Layanah. Any last words from you, Layanah?
Yeah, collaboration. And as mentioned, like risk-based approach in terms of oversight and regulating the overall process.
Thank you. That's super clear. Let's go to Maha.
I tend to call them the 3 C's: collaboration, compliance, and commercial viability.
Perfect. Thank you, Maha. Azleena.
I would go for just one single clarion call, and that's having a shared vision. And that shared vision is actually for shared prosperity and mutual benefit. That's all.
Thank you. Those are enlightened words to leave us with. And then let's close with Daranee.
Going to be a bit self-serving here. I want the report to include the oversight expectation of the interlinking arrangement.
Super. Well, let me thank all of you for joining us today. I certainly learned a lot, and I hope that our attendees did as well. We'll take these. We'll take your advice and your words of wisdom, and we will seek to include them in our final report. So with that, let's all give you a hand, and thank you very much.
Thank you.